Apple just announced the iPhone 17 series, and we got, as per usual, the base model iPhone 17, the 17 Pros, and then even an all-new iPhone Air. And I really think this time, Apple kind of changed the formula in a way. There were a bunch of unexpected surprises that really nobody saw coming, and it very much feels like we're headed in a totally new direction that might actually lead us to somewhere, unlike last year with all that Apple intelligence and camera control jargon. Diving in headfirst, let's start with the base model iPhone 17. And this is actually the one where I'd say we got the most surprises out of all of them. And Apple just completely ripped the barrier between the Pro and non-Pro's display, because not only are we getting a new 50% brighter than before, 3000 nit, 6.3-inch display with extremely thin borders, but also for the first time, 120Hz ProMotion on the base model, and it's the same one from the Pros, so this will also enable an always-on display, meaning you'll be able to see the lock screen at all times. And I mean, I don't even know why we're really celebrating, because we have kind of been waiting for this forever, but guys, they just ended it. The yearly roast of the base model iPhone not getting 120Hz is over, and it's finally caught up to Android's 2020 flagships. And yeah, I didn't say it wrong. Apple just attached a Pro branded feature to the non-Pro, which is kind of weird. In fact, in the latest rumors before the event, if you guys remember, we were told that we'd be getting 120Hz, but no promotion or always on display. And I'm just glad Apple is actually giving us the full suite of features, because I'm going to be honest, I would be quite mad if they didn't. This ProMotion display also means that it can go all the way from 1Hz to 120Hz adaptively. So when you're doing things that don't require all 120 of those frames, it'll save a lot of battery life as well. And Apple claims it has 8 more hours of video playback than the iPhone 16, from 22 hours to 30, which is a pretty huge jump, but only time will tell. And just a side note, we also got faster charging. So now, again, apparently, according to Apple, 50% in just 20 minutes, which is so nice. But remember, this is only when you pair it with a 40-watt adapter, which does not come in the box. Because remember, there's still Apple. We also got a slightly better A19 chip than before, which is, of course, faster than ever. But in all seriousness, it scores 11% higher for single-core CPU tasks, over 9% higher for multi-core CPU tests, and 20% faster for graphic performance in benchmark tests. A lot of this is because of the new 3nm process from TSMC called N3P, along with new neural accelerators in the GPU, which apparently makes it 4 times more powerful for AI. And then something else. Apple released a custom N1 Wi-Fi chip, which is kind of interesting. Now, turning it back around to the display again, we now have a second generation of ceramic shield. 5 whole years since the launch of the original in the iPhone 12 series. And it's much stronger, possibly 3 times stronger than the ceramic shield found in the iPhone 16. We also have a new anti-reflective display coating, which was actually said to be canceled by Apple in the rumors due to an inability to mass produce it, but they actually have it. And while it doesn't eliminate distractions completely, as you can see in this clip from Mr. Who's the Boss, it makes it much more readable, which is the main thing that really matters. That's it for the display and internals, but what about the cameras? Last year, Apple introduced a 48-megapixel ultrawide in the iPhone 16 Pros, which helped a lot with more detailed macro shots and action mode video. But what nobody saw coming in any rumors was that this year's base model will also get that exact same camera. Again, just ripping the barrier between Pro and non-Pro. We also got something I personally never use: dual camera video recording, where you can record with both the front and back camera to film, say, a show and your reaction at the same time. It's a bit like FaceTime almost, but instead of someone's face being in the larger window, it's your rear camera feed. You can even drag the front camera video around and it'll be mirrored in the replay footage, which is nice, but again, I just never use it. But the biggest upgrade to any camera this year was definitely the front camera, which now has a larger square 18-megapixel sensor, meaning you not only get high-resolution photos, but also open-gate pictures and videos for the first time in any sensor. Yep, another thing we got before GTA 6. And in case you don't know what open gate is, you're basically utilizing the full sensor so that you can just manually control with a button if you're taking a picture or recording a video in vertical or horizontal mode without needing to rotate the phone. And I honestly think it's kind of genius, despite making us more and more lazy, because in the past, if you were to take a selfie horizontally, the camera would be off to the side and your gaze would look kind of weird. But now, problem solved. They're calling it the center stage camera because it can also make sure you're in the frame the whole time for things like FaceTime calls, and this is enabled because the sensor is much wider than ever too. So that means in the camera app, you can just crop into the extremely wide view and get a perfectly fine shot. Okay, so now onto the pros, and we've got pretty much everything the iPhone 17 got, like the new, better 3000 nit anti-reflective display, the center stage front camera, dual camera video recording, faster charging to 50% in just 20 minutes, ceramic shield, and so much more. But also, along with these things, the biggest thing we got was probably this new design. It may not look like an insanely huge transformation on the face of it, but it's really when you start to get on the inside when you see the whole vision. And of course, there are some distinctions from last year, or should I say the 6 years before this year, such as the longer camera bar and the lighter white rectangle distinguished from the rest of the phone. But although these design choices seem like Apple was just trying to change it for change and purely no other reason, I think it's safe to say that pretty much every single big upgrade this year revolves around or links to this new design in some way or another. Starting with the new aluminum unibody chassis. Yep, after ranting on and on about the iPhone 15 Pro's titanium, we're switching back to aluminum, which is partly because it's lighter, but mostly because it's cheaper, something Apple's just too afraid to admit. But the aluminum is nice. Instead of surrounding just the sides like titanium and stainless steel did in the past, it also surrounds a lot of the back, like the camera bar and the parts of the back touching the sides. And then now we can get to the little lonely rectangle, which is actually not the same back glass we used to always have, which is also on the base model iPhone 17. In fact, it's actually the original ceramic shield instead of just normal glass. This means that according to Apple, it's now 4 times stronger than before, which is nice because it still enables wireless charging, unlike metal, while eliminating any need for further hate against back glass, which is extremely delicate and easy to break. The aluminum also made it easier to color than titanium. So this year we've got a silver, an orange, and a dark blue. And I don't know why we had all of these but no black option, but Apple made their decision and decided they only wanted 3 colors this year. Yeah, weird. But to sum it all up, I personally think the new two-tone design looks fire, despite the longer and larger camera bar being a bit wonky. And on that topic, you can now ask, why the larger and longer camera bar? And yeah, here's where we get to the largest, no pun intended, feature of the Pros this year. Inside this camera plateau, as Apple calls it, is, let me hold my breath, new 4x 100mm equivalent larger sensor 48 megapixel telephoto camera. And on the face of it, it actually seems like a downgrade. We had a 5x telephoto on the Pros last year, and now we have a 4x. Give me a break. But no, in fact, technically, we also got an 8x telephoto, which is the equivalent of a 200mm lens. You see, last year's 5x telephoto was a smaller 12 megapixel sensor, but since we're bumping up the resolution by 4 times this year, you can actually crop all the way into 8x and still get a perfectly decent 12 megapixel shot. And no, it's not truly 5 different camera lenses in your pocket like Apple wants you to believe, but it's pretty dang close. Oh yeah, and the 56% larger sensor means it receives much more light than before, something the telephoto has always struggled with. This is truly something that nobody can complain about, and that we are just glad it's here. And then there were just some, super pro features that seem kind of interesting. So there's now ProRes RAW video, which seems nice for people like movie makers and content creators, and there's also now Genlock sync support, which would help you link the shots of multiple iPhones to make this single matrix style shot. And these features, especially Genlock sync support, I really think is starting to make the Pro name actually true. In the past, pro always meant better, not necessarily for professionals, just for those who wanted more out of their phone. But this year, it feels different. These features, while useful to some, would be pretty much unknown to others. It's like some cherries on top for your ice cream. And last but not least, another pretty big thing for the pros this year is battery and internals. So you've got a way larger battery. Apple's claiming 33 hours compared to 27 hours on the Pro, and 39 hours compared to 33 hours on the Pro Max, which are some pretty healthy battery jumps. And for the tech nerds out there, the capacities of the Pro and Pro Max respectively are 4,252 milliamp hours and 5,088 milliamp hours, which for the Pro Max is the first iPhone with over 5,000 milliamp hours of battery. Good job, Apple. And then there's the new A19 Pro chip, which is just like the A19, aided by those neural accelerators, which increase the peak compute by 4 times for AI-related tasks, and the new N3P node. And coming from benchmarks, we've gotten a pretty average 12 to 15% increase in CPU performance, and then a 40% increase in GPU performance, which is actually pretty crazy. So now we're at M2 levels of performance for GPU. And lastly, along with the faster charging speeds I just mentioned, there's a new vapor chamber cooling system that should help a lot with sustained performance by 40%, another pretty absurd claim from Apple. And then last but not least, we arrived to the all-new iPhone Air. Not 17 Air, just Air, suggesting Apple wants this to be a completely new product line, different from the 17 and 17 Pros. And it's a new ultra-thin model, 5.6 millimeters thin. And just looking at it on camera when I was watching the event was insane. It truly felt unreal. Okay, so the basics are that it's got a 6.5-inch ProMotion display. It has the A19 Pro chip inside. It's got the new ceramic shield 2 on the front and then the original ceramic shield on the back to make it stronger. It has a titanium body, the new selfie camera, and more. But there are some compromises too, and they're all kind of built around this thinness. But I don't think these compromises were as bad as we expected them to be. So starting off naturally with the smaller battery, of course, we thought the battery life would actually suck on this new ultra-thin model, considering they unveiled a whole new MagSafe battery pack specifically designed for this phone and quoted only the battery life of both of them as 40 hours. Yep, they didn't even quote the phone itself without the pack. But I think we got a pleasant surprise here because when you look on Apple's website, they're saying 27 hours of video playback, which is actually the same as the iPhone 16 Pro. Wild. This is partly because there's a new high-density pack that can fit a higher capacity, but mostly because they made pretty much 100% of everything optimized around the battery. And it's the single thing that took up almost all of the space in the phone. So then where do all the other components go? Well, in the camera bar, or should I say again, the camera plateau. It's in this tiny little area at the top where you find things like the A19 Pro chip, the new in-house built C1X cellular modem that's a lot more efficient and twice as fast, which would also help with the battery, the single speaker, and the single camera. It's a bit like the iMac, where they put everything in the chin of the display, and they made the display ultra thin. Yeah, you guys heard that right. There's a single speaker which doubles as the earpiece and a single camera. And while it is 48 megapixels for a 2x crop, and we know the reason they couldn't add more camera lenses, it is still just a bit disappointing for me not to see any form of ultra-wide or telephoto here. I really think this is going to be something hard for Apple to sell to customers, because there really is no advantage of this over any other iPhone, and in fact, it's really the worst one this year, period. And with the starting price of $999, I really don't know who's buying this. Like, yeah, it's some cool tech, but like no one asked for a thinner phone. I'm gonna be blatant, Apple. We don't really need this. But at the same time, I can see this new direction Apple's going. Last year, they introduced a new iPad Pro that was the thinnest Apple product ever. And then following that, we got the Apple Watch Series 10. That was the thinnest Apple Watch ever. And then in 2026, we're expected to get a completely new MacBook design that is, like so, thinner than ever. And now they're taking this thinking to the iPhone with the iPhone Air, which is the thinnest iPhone ever. And yeah, that's pretty much it for all the models. But a last note to put on all of these is that they start at 256 gigs of storage, which used to only be the Pro Max, which is impressive considering they've managed to let the base model stay at that same sweet $799 price, which I'd argue is the best base model iPhone ever for your money. And while the smaller Pro model increased by $100 because of this, we gotta be thankful that even though there are tariffs, they barely raised the prices. These models are, dare I say, some models that finally let you stop and feel curious again. Something that can't be said about the lame upgrades of the past. It feels like we've finally gotten something different. Something that's fresh. Not just an iteration of the same thing over and over again, year after year. So my question is, what happens next? After all these upgrades, what is the next realistic step for Apple to take? It really feels like any further updates would be kind of useless because for the average consumer that isn't a tech enthusiast or professional, you don't need more from your phone. You don't need a new iPhone every single year. And I feel like now we've pretty much reached the peak, the roof of the iPhone in terms of its real world usefulness. Like yeah, maybe insane 100-watt fast wire charging would be nice. Maybe a 6,000 milliamp hour carbon silicon battery would be nice. Maybe a crazy 200 megapixel 1-inch size sensor camera would be nice. But for most people, this year's base model iPhone 17 is even enough after all the upgrades that made it better. And the iPhone 17 Pros, again, really feel deserving now of the title, going from what was originally intended to be better to now truly the Pro iPhone, with features like Genlock and ProRes RAW video, which I'm sure 99% of people won't even ever see. And on the face of it, it's kind of sad seeing these once revolutionary and fresh new products lose a lot of their innovation, even though we've been begging them to do something different in some way or another. Because by this point, there just isn't much to do. Not just for Apple, but for any company. I think we've reached a new era for not just the phone, but for technology in general. And the iPhone 17 is the prime example of this. Great phones, but what happens next? Alex, I'll explain. Signing out.